It's great to have you all joining us today. I'm really excited to be here with Tricia Nelson. She is an amazing expert on emotional eating, and she's the author of a book called Heal Your Hunger, which is a best-selling book. And Tricia knows pretty much everything about this topic, and I know a lot of you are really interested in learning more about this as it relates a lot to women's health, hormones, and PCOS. So thank you so much, Tricia, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Amazing. So I know that a lot of women deal with emotional eating, and you have a personal story to tell about this journey. How did you get interested in emotional eating, or how did you come to learn so much about this?
Definitely from my own experience, as it usually is. I was an emotional eater, I think, excuse me, from the get-go. As far back as I can remember, I loved food. I loved to cook food. I loved to serve it to others. I loved to eat it. Everything about food. And, it was always a highlight for me. Like every part of my day was like, what am I going to eat next? What am I going to get to eat? And if my family was going out to dinner that night, all day long, I'd have heart palpitations, so it's like, ooh, the salad bar. My favorite thing was this place we used to go called the Rusty Scupper, and they had this awesome salad bar. I loved salad bars. I didn't like salads at home, but on the salad bar you could have all the croutons and blue cheese dressing. It's like I had a little bit of salad with my blue cheese dressing. so
Yes.
So it's always the ooey gooey chewy, yummy fatty foods. I mean, I always like to say my favorite food groups were sugar, fat, and starch. Basically, you can get them in all one item, like a donut or a muffin or something. It was even better. But I started. I had a weight problem growing up, but I really in adolescence started to gain weight and get very overweight, and it was so uncomfortable for me. And I had this roll of fat on my tummy that I'd scrunch up in my hands, and I'd imagine slicing it off like you would slice the fat off a steak. And I would imagine like getting some disease where I'd automatically like lose weight. I get emaciated without trying, or joining the army where I'd be forced to exercise at boot camp. So, these pretty crazy thoughts. And it was because I couldn't control my weight and I felt so out of control. Now, not like eating less was never really something I thought about. It was just like, how do I get this weight off? I didn't connect the two, so,
Yes.
but when I started to eat less by going on diets, nothing really changed because I could only do it for a certain amount of time, and then I'd bust out, and I'd start overeating or binging. And it got to the point, Fiona, where my binges were pretty bad, where I could pack away like 3,000 or 4,000 calories in a sitting. And it got really dark. It wasn't just that I liked food, which is what I told myself, but what I have found that food addiction is a progressive thing. And so, it's irritating for a while, and then it gets really unhealthy and dangerous. And that's where it went for me. And so I just got to a place where I felt so bad about myself. I felt bad about how I looked. My self-esteem was low. I didn't have self-confidence. I couldn't use my voice. I wasn't strong. And it just literally colored everything that I did. And I was depressed, and I just felt really bad. And so what happened was that after trying so many different things that didn't work, I tried the pills, the potions, the lotions, the exercise programs, gyms, diets. Then I started doing deeper things like 12-step programs and therapy. I went to an eating disorders therapist, read all the self-help books. But what happened was not a lot, like things didn't really change until I met somebody who specialized in helping people with food issues. And he was a healer, and he shared with me that my problem had nothing to do with food, that had everything to do with the underlying causes. And even though I might have heard that from time to time, the way he said it, it really landed for me. And I realized that I'd been chasing all these different solutions that weren't getting to the heart of the problem. And the heart of the problem really was my relationship with food and the fact that I was an emotional eater. And so when I started addressing emotional eating, then everything turned around for me. I was able to lose 50 pounds and keep it off. And, I ended up joining him excuse me, in helping other people. And then eventually I married him. So we've been
Aw.
traveling this path for a long time, but my mission in life, my entire adult life, has been to help people with eating issues. And I do that now through Heal Your Hunger, which is really an online resource for people looking to address and heal emotional eating. And it's like my favorite thing to talk about. And it comes straight from my personal experience. And it really lands for people, I think, especially because I've been there and I know exactly how dark it can get with one's relationship with food.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's just an amazing journey that you've been through. And I know a lot of us, have had different issues with hunger and appetite and having hormones as women. We know that there's a lot of connections to that as well. And with a lot of the followers of my page have polycystic ovary syndrome. And that's associated with a large amount of hormonal issues, including increases in testosterone, but also a lot of abnormalities with blood sugar, insulin resistance. And a lot of us have found that when we went through our teenage years was when we started to become a lot more hungry than a lot of other people that we knew. And a lot of us, myself included, tended to just sort of feel really hungry and as if we couldn't get enough food because of that low blood sugar. And then I think as a lot of us get older, it becomes a little confusing to tell the difference between, how can you tell when this is emotional versus some kind of a hormonal type of issue related to blood sugar? I can definitely comment on some of that, but I'm wondering, can you share with us how you can really tell if your eating is related to emotions or stress?
Totally. It's a great question. And I just want to say, I really feel for people who are watching who do have PCOS, because it is, I know, such a struggle. And I thank you, Fiona, for all the amazing work that you're doing to help people with this, because it is so, so needed. I mean, there's nothing worse than just feeling completely compelled to eat when you know you don't want to, or you're not supposed to, or whatever. It's an awful situation. My experience is emotional hunger really mirrors physical hunger. Like, they seem like the same thing, and that's why it's so confusing. I mean, it amazes me to this day, and I've been doing this work for 30 years. It amazes me how I can, at some point in the day, be like, oh, I'm so hungry. And then I have to literally have a conversation with myself. I'm like, now, Tricia, are you really hungry? And I think to myself, actually, no. And then I have asked myself, what's really going on? But the way I can tell myself, the way I can quickly reason with myself is that I am a strong proponent of something called which I named called 3-meal magic. And this is literally eating 3 meals a day with nothing in between. And so much of the time, people who are struggling with their weight are snacking a lot, and
Yes.
right. And the snack foods we eat are usually not lettuce and carrot sticks. It's usually nuts, chips, candies, little grabby miniature things that we can get in a whole handful, M&Ms, whatever. And it's so easy to eat so much without realizing it from this snacking.
Yes.
The 3-meal magic is literally my North Star, because when I don't eat in between meals, first of all, I'm assisting my digestion, letting it do what it needs to do in between the meals. It's doing its work without any additional input, and that kind of gives it a break. But also mentally, it makes such a difference, because what's happening is I'm able to really have this conversation of sanity with myself. Like, when I feel like I'm so hungry, it really feels like I'm physically hungry. It's so amazing how emotional hunger can mimic physical hunger. But if I've had breakfast at 7 a.m., and I plan to eat lunch at 11:30 or 12, in between that time at 10 a.m. when I'm like, I'm so hungry, I can have kind of an adult conversation with my little child and say,
Yes.
you had breakfast, a good, it's important that those meals be healthy and, complete, right? So that we don't get too hungry in between meals. But,
Oh, yeah.
I can literally see, I can rationalize and reason with myself and say, I just ate, I ate a really good breakfast at 7, it's 10 o'clock. I bet I'm having some real hunger pangs start to emerge. but not to the point where I'm so hungry where I'm going to die if I don't eat, which is what emotional hunger feels like. It feels so urgent, like I'm going to die, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
So
there's a compulsion, right? Where it's like, oh, almost like a habit. Okay, I'll just go get a snack,
yeah,
and I think a lot of the time, what I often recommend is the exact same, like no snacking in between the meals. And if you're feeling in between your meals that you're hungry, what did you eat for that meal? Like, was that solid enough for you? But then you're bringing in this other level of, is that emotional?
yeah.
And can we have that conversation with ourselves to say, well, what did I actually eat at that meal? Was that a solid meal? If it was, am I really hungry here?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you can do the exploration. And that's what I'll do with myself. I'll say, okay, I don't think you're actually physically hungry. So what's going on? And usually there's something I don't want to do or something I'm afraid to do, like a phone call I've been putting off or an assignment I've been putting off. And it's amazing how, those types of things, those emotional drags can make us want to grab for something to continue to avoid, right? It's a great avoidance tool, eating, but also to cover up those uncomfortable feelings of fear or dread or being insecure, not knowing how to handle a situation. I mean, doing my taxes can really make me hungry.
Oh, yes. Every year.
So it's like, it's so tied to my emotions, and it's just so habitual to eat when we have that little bit of hunger. And I do say to people, in order to heal your hunger, you have to feel your hunger. And, we're just not used to that. We're used to feeding it the minute we feel it. But, I've had to get used to the fact that I'm going to be okay and I'm not going to die if my stomach is growling a little bit, and just giving myself, again, those meals to look forward to. Don't worry, Trish, you're not going to starve. Lunch is coming, it's going to be okay. Just one more task and you can, have lunch. And so those 3 meals, just as a North Star of knowing that you're going to get the food you need and that you don't have to eat between meals, is so, so helpful.
Oh, I just love that because a lot of the time, I think for a lot of the women who have PCOS or insulin resistance, and there's even research to back this up, is that we actually don't really feel hunger that the way that we are supposed to, and we can misinterpret sensations as hunger because we don't feel that hungry feeling, that normal hungry feeling. And so you're sort of reaching to I need something, is that hunger. And so you try to eat to see if that's going to make that feeling improve. And, a lot of the time it's not hunger. So, and I think a lot of this increases too when we have tension. So with PMS, I think it's natural for women to feel increased hunger, and that's partly hormonal, but there's also there's a decrease in progesterone, and progesterone makes us feel really calm and able to handle stress better. And when that's kind of dropping, as well as estrogen, that can make us feel kind of cranky, and maybe we can do something about that or make ourselves feel a little bit better. So sometimes there is that emotional component, and that's where chocolate and things like that tend to come in more often.
No question about it, but it's, I think just learning that we can break that habit, but also, of course, doing the deeper emotional work is so important because I don't have the willpower to not eat. And so I have to, look at some of those, the physical and the emotional underpinnings. And so much of the time, just having a way of really dealing with stress and dealing with emotions that are uncomfortable is going to make a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. And I know a lot of the people following us here have dealt with a lot of these different issues. So if anyone, has gone through anything that you would describe as emotional eating, or if you're not sure it is, you can just give us a thumbs up or a heart, and just let everyone else know you're not alone dealing with this. And I just had a couple of questions, about really, what, other than that tip about, talking to yourself and having that, conversation about, well, what is that? Or, can I, am I really hungry? Is there anything else that you would suggest that we can do during that time to sort of either as a distraction or as a way to really check and see if we're actually really hungry in between the meals?
Sorry, I was muted. Definitely a lot of different things. I will say that it, before, I mean, I want to preface this by saying there's things we can do first thing in the morning that will change what we experience later in the day. And so, you know, when you are having cravings at the time, there are definitely things you can do, changing your state, going out for a walk. I mean, so much of the time it's just like we've been sitting in one place doing the same thing, and we're just like, we're looking for a little hit, like an energy hit, and doing that in a lot healthier way, like getting like a 10-minute walk can change your state, or turning on a song that you love, you know, or pulling up an iTunes video, a comedy video, or something that just makes you change, you know, that state where you're looking for pick me up, and doing it in a healthier way is definitely good. But definitely starting first thing in the morning in a different way is something I highly recommend. So you're not face to face with a cookie trying to say no. You know, if it comes down to me and a cookie, the cookie will win. So what I really want to do is start my day in a way where I have a different source of power to choose from or to pull from instead of willpower. And I really recommend that people have some kind of routine in the morning, a centering routine where they can get still and quiet and get centered and tap into what I believe is a divine source of energy that is available to all of us. It doesn't matter what you call it. If you're, you know, religious, you call it God or Jesus or whatever. But if you're not, to me, it's this energy, I call it divine energy, wherever it comes from. We have that resource, but we have to cultivate it. And it's hard to call on it when we're staring at a cookie. You know, I mean, I recommend it. You know, prayer is great, but starting the day out first, making that connection and really getting still and quiet instead of darting off to take care of, you know, all the problems of the world, will help you be able to come back to that at times of stress throughout the day, and will also help you not create stress, because unfortunately a lot of times we create the stress that we then stress eat over. So definitely some things I recommend. I call them the 6 self-care success secrets for the morning routine. I start my day in prayer. I also have a meditation, 20-minute meditation that I do. Writing is a great tool. Reading spiritual literature or something inspirational that you can grab hold of is really important. And just connecting with yourself or with a friend, also getting that oxytocin hit as well. But things that you can do to sort of draw on a source of power that isn't food, because when we are, you know, weighted down, when we are stressed out, when we're feeling weak, food is just such a quick and easy thing to turn to. So we have to start cultivating other things that can really empower us when we are feeling weak and down. But the other thing, Fiona, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. Just having that, you know, whatever it is that we all would do to relieve our stress and start our day off like that, and have the intention that we're going to be taking care of ourselves today. We're going to know that there's going to be tough times coming up throughout the day, and just setting our minds up to be able to handle that stress, because it's inevitable. And a lot of the time I do tell a lot of my patients that, you know, we know that there are going to be stressful times, you know, during the day, and even planning, like, what are you going to do during that time? If normally, you know, say you would come home from work and the first thing you would do would be to go for whatever kind of carbs or cookies or whatever is there. Even, you know, something as simple as having, if this is related to blood sugar, because with PCOS it often is, having something in the car on the way home, like a smoothie ready, and then going home and doing something completely just to take care of yourself. That's not, you know, have a bath or do some yoga or something that's really about taking care of yourself. Because I think a lot of the time the food, that's how we kind of learn to take care of ourselves and relieve the stress. So I really like that about starting off in the morning, because it really does set you up for the entire day, which often does contain different kinds of stress for most of us.
No question about it. There's also something that I wrote about in my book, and I talk about in my online course called the anatomy. Called The Anatomy of the Emotional Eater. And these are 24 characteristics of the emotional eater. Because a lot of times people think emotional eating is just about eating the wrong foods or the wrong amounts. But it's really about so much more. And I have found in the past 30 years that I've been doing this, that there's definitely characteristics that are central to every emotional eater's experience. And they're also, I mean, they're qualities other people have as well. I just feel like we've really nailed these particular ones.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so I just want to talk about that because that'll help people realize that it's a lot more than just, at the moment eating too much. And one of the character traits, or the top of the 24 characteristics, which I find all emotional eaters have, is that we're people pleasers. And this is a real problem because and part of it's because, we have experiences and we tend to want validation. I mean, it's human nature to want validation outside of yourself, but I find emotional eaters have less of it for themselves, and they draw more from outside themselves. And so the people pleasing comes in when we're trying to get that validation and we're not going inside for it, we're going outside for it. And the problem with people pleasing is that we take on too much. Overeaters are typically overdoers. And so we tend to take on too much, we do too much, we commit to more than we can handle. And then at the end of the day, we're exhausted, and we also tend to be resentful because we didn't get the validation we were looking for. That's the problem with people pleasing, is like we have an idea in our mind of how pleased somebody is going to be. Right?
Yes.
And if they're not, then we're kind of pissed off, like, what's up with that? Right?
Kind of disappointing, right?
Yeah, they barely said thank you. And then we were kind of like, "Rrr." And then we go home, and we'd have what I call the I deserve it binge, like it's like nobody else is appreciating me. At least I'm going to appreciate, I'm going to give myself what I'm looking for. And it's like we reward ourselves with food. And so that's just an example of how the way we live really informs the way we eat, because when we are people pleasing, it's really a trap that's going to get us into trouble every single time. And so, instead of just focusing on what we eat, it's really important that we start focusing on how we're living and the decisions we're making. Very typical for emotional eaters to not really speak up and be able to say no, right? And that's how we get into people pleasing. And we have to start using our voice and expressing how we feel, because I often say it or stuff it, right? So if we don't express ourselves, we will stuff it with food. And so again, we have to start speaking up. And these are things I teach people in my course, but it's just really important that the way we are living changes. And that's why, that's really, Fiona, why 98% of all diets fail, because people are just changing the physical and eat the way they eat, but they're not changing the way they're living. And you can't really have success with weight loss unless you make these fundamental changes in the way you interact in your life, the way you relate to other people, and really in the boundaries that you need to set.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Very deep stuff, and makes, a lot of sense when you think about it, about the people pleasing. And I know that's something that, a lot of women are people pleasers in general.
Yes.
And we're made to nurture and care, and then there's really not a lot left after that for us, right? Yeah. So what do we have? We have food. And so it's kind of that nurturing that we have, given to ourselves, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. And I was wondering if you have any tips. So a lot of the time, we try to do our best. And then one of these days, I get a lot of my patients coming in, they're like, well, I was doing so well, and then I went and I ate, all these things that weren't on the plan, and I feel really horrible. And, how can women really help themselves, after that kind of day? What should they say to themselves the next day? Do you have any tips to help out our viewers on that?
Absolutely. When somebody feels like they blew it, so important to realize, first of all, hopefully we're going to have a lot of days in this lifetime to live. There's a lot of one days at a time. And so it's really important to realize that it doesn't have to mar us or be a, predictor of all the days to come. And in fact, the more we berate ourselves when we fall down, the more likely it is we're going to stay stuck in that pattern, because the more we berate ourselves, the more we feel down, the more we want to comfort ourselves with food or beat ourselves up more, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's just really important that people just realize it's one meal or it's one binge or whatever it is. And that we can just get up and start back doing the things that we know are good for us. And it's going to happen. People have that experience, life gets stressful. And it's also, what I like to say is, when you are changing your habits and getting healthier, it's really, it does take time to adopt new habits. And I liken it to turning a ship around. A big, huge, freighter or a big, huge cruise ship isn't just going to do a 180 in a matter of seconds. I mean, that ship has to, it has to slow down, and really come to a stop before it can really, if it's turning all the way around, it's going to have to come to a stop. But if not, it's going to still take time to veer in whatever direction they need to go. It doesn't happen on a dime. And so neither does adopting new eating habits. We're talking about a lifetime sometimes of, poor eating choices or food choices. And, people get so down on themselves when they mess up, or they don't, do it as they thought they should or could. And, I always tell my clients, this is like, you're changing a lifetime of habitual eating, and it's just such an ingrained habit. And so you have to be patient with yourself and not fall in the trap of, just berating yourself, because then you can't get anywhere and you can't turn it around when you're in that hole. So just really being sweet to yourself, also being, a part of a community where people can really cheer you on, is so, so important. I tell people, you cannot lose weight and change your eating habits unless you do it with a community of people. And, in my case with emotional eaters, I have something called the Heal Your Hunger community, because you've got to have the outside support. Otherwise, temptation gets too great. If you're hanging out with a bunch of eaters who don't care if they're overeating, or don't care if they're overweight or whatever, it's so hard. It's so hard. So you have to be connected to people who have the same goals as you and can really root you on and cheer you on. Because again, a lifetime of eating does not turn around in one day, and you've got to have that support.
That's so true. And I can't agree with you more. So if you're struggling with this, go check out the Heal Your Hunger community with Tricia, because she's amazing. And her whole community is so supportive.
Yeah.
And I've been researching a lot about the brain and appetite. And, I think we do have to forgive ourselves a lot, because in our environment right now, we are dealing with us being given at a very young age foods that taste better than any foods humans have ever eaten before. And those foods change the way our brain functions. And when we're given those foods, we start to associate them with pleasure and feeling good. And other foods don't taste as strong or as good and don't give our brain that same hit. And women who have PCOS have a little more testosterone. And so that prefrontal cortex of the brain that controls impulse is a little bit, sometimes it's a little bit more impulsive in some ways. And they find that's why you'll see a lot of the adolescents who have PCOS with higher testosterone eating more. And those foods just taste so good. They're engineered to taste good. Our brains have to relearn how to taste food again, and that takes time. And so do be forgiving of yourself, because you're fighting against the food industry in a way that's really kind of like shifted us. And shifting yourself back is possible. And it just takes time to start realizing that, hey, you know what, like vegetables really do taste really good. And when you cut back on sugar for a good long while, there's berries actually taste really sweet. And it just takes a long time to kind of, even come away from those physical types of elements, never mind all the emotional, which are just as strong.
Yeah.
So definitely don't beat yourself up. I think it's totally normal. If you went through the rest of your life never eating, always eating perfectly, that would be a pretty stressful way of existence as well. So I think like we kind of have to know that, these things are going to happen, and we just move on, and the next day is always another day to take care of yourself again.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact that somebody is here, even taking in this information, coming to you for help, really making an attempt at being healthier and changing their lives. I mean, that you're beating like most of the people in this planet, you know, I mean, most people aren't trying and they're not working on themselves. I mean, unfortunately, you know, so many people are just like, you know, like Popeye, I am what I am and I'm not going to change, you know, and so it's just really important to just pat yourself on the back too, that you're even here and trying to make changes, because most people just aren't even bothering. And so I have such a heart for people who are really into self-improvement, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you right now, but if you want different results, clearly you're going to have to do something different. And the fact that you're on this road and getting this help from Dr. Fiona is just so important.
Yeah, all the people that come in to see me, you know, and this is one of the things I find so frustrating about what women are told who have PCOS. So they'll go to the doctor, and often they go to, you know, a gynecologist or a family physician. And, you know, these women work really hard, you know, harder than a lot of people to eat healthy. They're, you know, they know everything. They're, you know, really doing a great job in exercising, and then they go to the doctor and they're told, you know what, you just need to lose weight and your PCOS is going to be much better, you know, and it's very disheartening, you know, to think about that when you talk about like, these are the people that are here looking for help. And that's sort of the way, you know, society, there's this kind of judgment, or even in the medical profession, towards, you know, as if it's somehow, you know, something that you've caused yourself or you've chosen. And that lack of, you know, you shouldn't have any kind of compassion for yourself. You just need to, you know, just lose weight.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it, right? As if they, you know, would ever even know how hard that is if they would have to try that themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I always find that really a struggle to think about that. So I'm always telling women, you know, just remember, like, everything that you're doing it's very meaningful, and, you know, just sort of ignore that.
Yeah. Well, it's so beautiful. I mean, that you have the personal experience of what you're teaching people. You know, the fact that you've been through it is so powerful. And I find that's why I'm able to help people, is because I've been through it. And it just ups the compassion ante, you know, it just ups everything when you've been through it and you're showing people exactly what you've done, and you know how the struggle is, and also how frustrating it is. I mean, I've had people say they went to a therapist who's like, just eat a steak, you know, or just eat, you know, or just exercise more. I'm sorry, the eat a steak was for somebody who was anorexic. That was literally what a therapist told that person. But otherwise, they tell people like,
that's terrible.
Eat less and exercise more is their solution. And it's just, you know, not in the cards for some people to just do that.
Oh yeah, definitely not. And so I got some questions here from people viewing this. So I just wanted to go through and answer them. So from Jenna, she's asking, how many hours between meals do you recommend? And she's following my meal plan in the book, and it allows 2 snacks a day. So first I'll comment on that, the snacks. So generally, and that we do recommend that the snacks are dependent on the person. And we often recommend that people who are insulin resistant to a significant degree don't snack at all in between the meals. But those who have blood sugar regulation issues might need to snack, but only once in between 2 meals a day. And those snacks would tend to be low glycemic or low insulin index snacks, and very kind of specific snacks. But over time, we usually find that most women don't need to snack at all. And so, you know, usually we'll look at, you know, having even time restricted feeding, or, you know, a lot of times eating within an 8-hour window. So the 3 meals would be, you know, within that time frame, or 8 or 9-hour window. That's quite flexible, but several hours in between the meals is what I typically recommend. What about you, Tricia?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, my experience is 4 or 5 hours. Like that's what I do for myself and what I recommend for people. So if you eat at 7 a.m., you have lunch at 12, you know, and then again at 5, that's typically what I do, you know, give or take an hour. But that's comfortable for me. You know, I'm pretty hungry by mealtime if it's 5 hours, you know, and if it's long, I can make it longer sometimes, but I'm pretty conscious of not taking, you know, a 7 p.m. dinner meeting with somebody, I always like push to have it earlier because I just don't want to go too hungry. I don't want that experience. And if I do go too hungry, you know, it's not good because then my body has trouble remembering that I'm feeding it. Like it doesn't get the signals, right? And so I'm eating and I'm not getting sated, and I can easily overeat then because I'm waiting for the signals. And if it's just when I get too hungry, I've got that alert going off that I'm starving.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. Like, I know that for me, getting hungry, like really hungry or going too long past that meal time, for me, that, especially in the evening, is a recipe for disaster.
It really
And
is. Yeah, it
yes.
really is. And it's, I mean, really what we're talking about is getting clear and conscious. You know, it definitely,
Mhm.
you know, we're not going to eat differently unless we wake up. And to wake up, what I mean by that is to really start getting conscious of our needs, just like we would our children. It amazes me, you know, with our children, we're so conscious of the fact that our kid needs to eat, right? And we're gonna feed
Yeah.
our child. But when it's us, oh no, we'll skip meals, we're busy, don't have time to stop, you know, or whatever. But we wouldn't do that for our child. We make sure our child gets the 3 meals, right? And so why not us? And so it's just
Yeah.
really important that we make sure we get what we need. And I speak up, as I said, I'll push for a better time with somebody, or I'll eat ahead of time and just go watch them eat if it comes down to it. Cause that's how much I care that I get what I need, because I know the results when I don't.
I love that. You know, it's so true. We'll feed our children on time and then we will not feed our own bodies. And it's like, you've got to put that mask on, as they say in the plane, and take care of yourself, you know, and nurture yourself, or you're going to end up in hot water.
Yeah.
And, you know, I find like, and even research, you know, looking at the neuroscience of eating, it shows us that in the evening, we're the most hungry. And it's because our bodies know that we're not going to be able to go get food in a more natural environment. In the morning, we're the least hungry. So that's the time where we should be nurturing ourselves the most, because we know that that's, you know, that time. So that awareness, I think, is super, super powerful.
No question about it. It's so much about self-care. And that's, you know, the thing is that's really self-esteem building. Like what we're talking about here is so much more than just, you know, self-care habits or eating habits. It's really about our whole person. And when we take care of ourselves, when we like make ourselves a priority by saying to somebody, hey, I need to eat, you know, meet at such and such a time so I can make sure I eat, or whatever we do to stand for ourselves, is going to just automatically build self-esteem inside of us. And the more we can stand for ourselves, the more we can feel better about ourselves because we've stood up for ourselves, the better success we'll have anywhere in our lives, because we'll be able to like not only stand for what we believe in, but in so many ways we'll be able to speak up and take care of things that need to be taken care of, which will just mean we won't have to eat over it later.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I just love that. And then we have another question here. It's from Vera. And Vera asks, can really intense cravings be healthy? So a few days in the past week or two, she's had intense cravings for protein, eggs and chicken, for example. She gave into the cravings and couldn't seem to get enough. As someone who could never trust her cravings, this made her feel a bit freaked out. So what would you comment on that, Tricia?
Well, I would say for if somebody is having a lot of protein cravings, perhaps you're not getting enough protein. You know, like our bodies
Yeah.
will talk to us, you know, and it's just something to know. And again, I try not to eat between meals because otherwise things get it throws off my whole 3 meal magic plan. And so, but I will notice if I'm having cravings for some kind of food, you know, I'm usually, if it's not a junk food, it's probably because there's nutrients in that food that I am needing. And so it's just, again, this is part of the process of becoming more conscious and aware. And maybe it's an adrenal issue as well, you know, needing more protein, or, I mean, you can speak to that better than I can, but, you know, typically it's because, you know, my body is needing something more and I just have to work that into my meals.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I feel like when it's a healthy food that you're craving, there's probably some kind of physiologic reason for that. Whereas if it's something like candy, there's probably no physiologic reason for that. That's good. So if it's, you know, if it's for, because we do need those proteins to make neurotransmitters and lots of body tissues, you know, and that actually has been shown, you know, when we're deficient in iron, we can crave things that are not even actually food in order to get iron into our bodies. So that's called PCOS. So there's all kinds of reasons for different kinds of cravings. So I think if it's a craving like what you were mentioning, Vera, that could actually be something really to listen to, because that seems more of like a natural kind of physiologic urge rather than, I think I'm just gonna eat something, and it doesn't really make any particular sense to you. All right. So, yeah, if anybody would like to get in touch with Tricia, I mean, first of all, her book is amazing. If you haven't picked it up yet, it's called Heal Your Hunger, and it's got so much information and so many tips that you can use right away to help with emotional eating. And she really kind of gets into, the deeper level and into the heart of why, people overeat or why people emotionally are attached to food. And I think that understanding and awareness is so key, especially if you have any kind of a metabolic disorder, because it can get really confusing, And then Tricia, do you have anywhere else that people can connect with you?
Yeah, I want to recommend that people take the emotional eating quiz that I have on the homepage of my website, healyourhunger.com. On there, there's a quiz. And if you take that quiz, you're going to get a personalized score, which is going to show you where you are on the spectrum. Because I believe emotional eating is a spectrum. And at the low end, I mean, I think everybody's an emotional eater to some degree. But on the higher end, we really have more of the realm of food addiction. So you can find out where you are on that spectrum. You might be a food addict like me and be taking it too far way too often. So find out your personalized score, and then you'll get suggestions on how you can overcome that. But I'd love to, stay in touch. And I do have a course, 10 Weeks to Freedom from Emotional Eating as well, if somebody's interested in really diving in and addressing this and getting that Heal Your Hunger community, support as well.
Oh, that's amazing. And thank you so much, Tricia. It's just been so amazing to learn from you and to really get this, area of understanding about, eating, because I've just been so interested in the brain lately and how it interacts, with all of the different hormones and our metabolism, as well as our emotions and our associations with, different types of foods. And because it's just so central to our overall health and well-being.
No question. I so appreciate your having me. It's been such a pleasure.
All right. Well, bye for now. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye.